Okay, here are the dependency questions. So this is about whether or not you can be considered a dependent student for federal student aid. In other words, whether or not you will be providing your parents information on the application. So this first set of questions are sort of the automatic criteria for becoming independent. So were you born before January 1st, 1991? So that is 24 years of age by the time school is starting. As of today, are you married? The beginning of the school year, will you be working on a master's or a doctorate program? If the answers to those questions are no, you're considered a dependent student, and you will be providing parent information in the rest of the form. But there's still, as we keep going through here, there are more questions about dependency. If you have children of your own that you will be providing more than half of their support during the academic year in question, and you say yes to this question, you would be considered an independent student. Do you have dependents other than your children or a spouse who live with you and receive more than half of this support? So again, if you say yes to that question, you would be considered independent and not have to provide parent information. And you can see each one of these questions have helpful hints on the side that help you figure out exactly how you should answer that question for yourself. Are you currently serving active duty in the military? If you say yes to that question, you would be considered independent. Are you a veteran? This question about foster status, so before the age of 13, were your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Or were you a dependent or ward of the court? So again, note what that's about. It's about before you turned age 13. If you can say yes to that question, then we're not going to require you to report parent information. Even if you are no longer in foster care, if someone else has been taking care of you since age 13, that's okay. We don't want that person's information. We would just want your information as a student. So if you still have to say no to that question, we've got another question for you. As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor? So again, you would know how to answer this question if you were in this situation. You need the court documentation to show that you have been an emancipated minor in order to say yes to that question. And if you continue to say no, the next question is, have you been in a legal guardianship? And again, this is a court status. You would have documentation if you were able to say yes to that question, and you would be asked for that documentation. So if you still say no, there's one more question, and this is about homelessness. So were you homeless, or were you self-supporting or at risk of being homeless even? If you can say yes to that question, then for the FAFSA, we consider you to be independent and you don't have to provide parent information. In order to show that status, you're going to have some documentation from an agency in your hometown who can help to document what your status is. So the financial aid office at the schools you're applying to are going to ask those questions. You can see the related question here is about unaccompanied youth. So again, this is a legal designation that a high school or a school district would be able to help you with the answers to that question and documentation. So let's say we said no to that question. The next step, it's letting you know that based on the questions you've answered, you're considered a dependent student and you will have to provide parent information. If you've gone through all of that and you can't truthfully say yes to any of those questions, but you still have special circumstances and are unable to provide parent information, you can say, I'm unable to provide parent information, and go on from there and fill out the rest of the form. The schools that receive your FAFSA information will have follow-up questions for you about exactly what your status is, what your situation is. They can do what's called a dependency override that allows us to consider you an independent student if we agree with you, that if you provide enough documentation to show that that's necessary. So often students will work with their school counselors, with their support systems at home, people that have been that they have been living with, that have been providing housing or shelter for them, to help provide that information to schools. So we've got the documentation and we'll be able to treat you as an independent student. But we're at this point, we're going to go ahead and say, yes, I'm going to provide my parent information so we can take a look at that and see what that looks like.